So whilst we're waiting, a small correction. I no longer work with Siemens. I left Siemens 2 years ago, where I was everything that Robin said. I'm still very active in the energy world, so I'm on the board of a couple of renewable energy companies, and also on the board of the Association of British NGOs working in development. Have we... You found it?
Yeah, well, it's not open.
Okay, in the meantime, I'll start with an introduction. I met UPF about a year ago and started talking to them about a number of things. Because I'm also a mediator, so I'm very interested in peace and peace mediation. But the topic we decided to work a little more closely on is energy. Yeah, as probably most of you know, one of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, Sustainable Development Goal number 7, is energy access for all by 2030. And so with Margaret and Robin and a couple of other members of UPF, we decided to prepare a questionnaire that we can share with UPF chapters in Africa, namely, to see whether there is any way in which we can work together to stimulate the implementation of small-scale renewable energy projects in Africa. Yeah, there's a lot of movement, a lot of activity in this area at the moment in Africa as well as in other continents, but they still tend to be quite large-scale projects. And where the problem is really in rural areas, in small villages, that are still seeing no access to electricity. So we'd like to work with the UPF chapters and partners in Africa to see whether there's some countries, some regions where we could help. And I'll say a little more about that later. Okay, so well, the title sounds quite complicated. It isn't as complicated as it sounds. Distributed flexible energy systems for the future. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is where are we at since the Paris conference? What are some of the main trends that have appeared and are happening at the moment? And I'll spend some time talking about more than a technology, a technique called balancing the system, which is quite fascinating, and I'd like to spend a little time sharing with you. But let's start. Okay. Is it, which one is it? Okay, got it. All right. So let's start off with looking at where are new renewable energy technologies today? Yeah. So I think this is a very good snapshot of where that is at. These numbers do not include hydro. Now, hydro has in many countries being one of the main generators for decades. You know, if you think of China, if you think of the US, hydro has always been very important. But this slide wants to show the progress that has been made in solar and wind in particular. So what we can clearly see here in the middle, I mean, unfortunately the numbers are probably a bit small for you to see. Which is the pointer here, Robin?
The central button.
The central button, okay. Yeah. So if we look at Europe, yeah, UK, Germany, Spain, Italy, we can see that solar and wind is already at between 25 and 30%. And in the UK, actually, in April, renewables overtook coal for the first time in history. So, I mean, that is something phenomenal, yeah? And we see that even in other countries, like the US, I mean, obviously we know that the US, and all the more, unfortunately now with friend Trump, is very focused on hydrocarbons. But we see that even the US has increased over the last 10 years from 3 to 9%, China from 6 to 10%, Brazil 6 to 18%. So not even Trump is going to be able to stop this, and many states in the US have already said to him he can say what he wants. They're just going to go ahead and continue with their renewable programs. So one important point to say is that solar and wind are growing, they're unstoppable, obviously supported by the Paris Agreement, but it's becoming, even in a business sense, not very economically viable and an area of growth in many countries. Yeah? So the solar sector in the US today is far stronger than the coal sector. Yeah? So if Trump wants jobs, he better look in the direction of solar rather than coal. Yeah? So if we look at the UK, for example, where is the UK at? The UK has the choice of sticking to the left, a centralized system, yeah? A centralized system with large power generators that still pollute. I mean, the technology has improved, but they are still big polluters. There's more wind than solar, yeah? But then you also need a very expensive transmission and distribution network to get the energy from those large plants into everywhere in the country, big towns, small villages. But what is growing in parallel is a decentralized system, yeah? A decentralized system that has a lot more renewables than big monsters like that, yeah? Big polluting monsters. So there's wind, there's solar, and it's developing at a local level to satisfy local energy needs. Yeah? So you move away from the idea of having a handful of very large power plants, including nuclear, supplying the whole country, to actually saying, no, certain regions become autosufficient and can actually generate their own energy. Yeah? The problem is, with a lot of renewables, you also have a lot of ups and downs in the generation, and that's a big problem. But why this system is becoming more viable is for two main reasons. A, it avoids having to invest billions, yeah, in the transmission and distribution network. It allows to use much more renewables that are obviously, really help lower the carbon footprint. But what is enabling all of this is the following graph. Many of you have probably heard about energy storage, and it's talked about a lot, particularly in conjunction with electric vehicles, and I'll come back to that a little later. But storage is now being used also in the energy generation space. Yeah? And what is happening is quite incredible. Today, the price of storage, 2016, you're talking about 500 to 700 US dollars per kilowatt hour. That will drop by more than half in, to more than half in 2020. And you can actually see that in these predictions, by 2030, the cost will be at $73 per kilowatt hour. So basically, a tenth of where we are today. And what has been blocking storage has been that it is very expensive. That is changing, mainly thanks to Mr. Musk and electric vehicles, because of course the more storage you produce, the more your costs will go down. So storage is now becoming very economically viable, and it helps in two ways. It resolves the intermittency problem. So, a day like today, where you leave your home and your umbrella flies away first and then you second, yeah, you can be sure that there's going to be a lot of wind generated. Too much wind, actually, the system can't deal with it. And that's where storage comes in, because storage can capture that and release that energy at a later stage when the wind has died down and there's less energy, yeah? And so it's good to be used with solar and wind, but it's also good to be used centrally, storing energy from different sources. So that, for example, a lot of homes consume a lot around 8, 9 in the evening, but you have no sun at that time, so there's no solar energy being generated. Not a problem with storage, because if it's been a nice day, storage will have collected the energy generated during the day, and will release it at night when the household needs that energy. Yeah? So storage is basically the key to unleashing here renewables growing even further, allowing that decentralized energy generation system, moving away from a centralized, heavily driven by gas-fired, coal-powered, nuclear-powered stations. Yeah? So what else is happening? And this is where I come back to the balancing I was talking about before. What do I mean with balancing? Yeah? What often happens is that National Grid, that most of you will know, manages the transmission grid in the UK, they have to make sure that when there's a real big surge in demand in the system, that it doesn't fall over. And it can be a big problem, you know. Say there's a World Cup football match, and it's the interval, everybody gets up and goes and makes a cup of tea, yeah? The system has an enormous surge at that point. A National Grid has to have reserve power generators that are off a lot of the time, just there to deal with these moments when there's a surge. Well, what is happening today with storage, also with IT, is that you have systems that can actually control the whole supply and demand scope. Yeah? So coming back to that cup of tea during the football game, here it is, that's a kettle. Yeah? At the time when half of England is producing that cup of tea and causing a surge in energy demand, the supermarket next door, or many supermarkets, can actually switch off their fridges for a few minutes. That means they're not consuming energy at all. That energy can go to the kettles. So National Grid doesn't need to generate more energy. You can balance the system, a bit like an orchestra. Yeah, you say you're on now, you're off now, which means that we can have more energy, but we don't need to spend more money on infrastructure and on polluting generation, because we are controlling the system and we're managing it. Yeah? So that for me is one of the key elements of our energy future, that we will consume more, but without needing to generate more, and generating it with renewable energy thanks to storage and the IT that can help us with all of this. Another example here is, you know, what I said, a day like today, the wind turbines going like crazy, and with storage, you can capture that. Or, you know, if you have an IT managing the system, you've got a water company that needs energy to pump water, you can tell that water company, pump it now, yeah, because there's loads of wind energy being produced, yeah? So again, another situation where potentially this energy that would have gone lost is not going lost, it's being used at the right moment, because I mean that water company doesn't necessarily need to pump at 6 in the evening, it could do that pumping just as well at 12 when the wind turbines are turning like crazy. So again, it's back to the orchestra, yeah, using more, but not needing to generate more because you're managing it a lot better. And this is also interesting from a residential point of view. I mean, what I showed you there was industry and commercial activities helping out, yeah? There's a company in Germany that I met recently, they're called Sonnen. They supply solar panels for rooftops, for homes, and also the storage. Because again, in a home, as long as there's sun, you're generating electricity, but you're not at night. If you have storage, you can capture that energy you're generating during the day and use it in the dark, yeah? But what Sonnen also offers is to enter a community, yeah? So that if you, at 6 in the evening, don't need the energy you've got, you can actually sell it to your next door neighbor or to the village next door. So you're producing energy in households. You could almost cut off the central generation and transmission system, yeah? And things like, projects like these are starting in the UK as well. And obviously, at the moment, Sonnen is working mainly on a local level, yeah? But in time, they will actually be able to do this on a national level, using the existing infrastructure, yeah? But think of that, a world where you don't really need EDF or whoever is your energy supplier anymore, because homes are in a community are basically producing and sharing the electricity they need. Another interesting aspect is electric vehicles, yeah, from 2 points of view. This shows numbers. So as you can see here, by 2040, almost half of the cars will be electric vehicles. So zero carbon footprint, yeah? They don't pollute at all. And look at the growth curve here. Incredible. But the more interesting part for me here is what will happen is you wake up in the morning, you get into your car, you go to the office, you park your car at a solar carport, you leave it to charge the whole day. You take it home at night, you just plug in your car and you basically provide your house the energy it needs from your car. Wake up the morning after, do the same thing. And you obviously make a point of having enough energy in your car battery to get you to the office, yeah? But again, another way, without depending on large power plants or large transmission systems, you're producing and managing your own energy and sharing it within your household and in the community. So you can see where I'm going to. You know, we're moving to a world that is carbon neutral, where you don't have to rely on spending loads of money on your polluting electricity, but where you can participate in a community whereby sharing the energy we are generating ourselves, we are able to actually satisfy that increasing demand, but without polluting and balancing the system. And electric vehicles, as I said, will play a key role in that. And so obviously, I've talked about a few technologies, but what I've talked about mainly also is techniques. It's methods by which we generate and manage our energy. And at the end of the day, everything I've talked about will also benefit countries, particularly in Africa, that today still have no access to electricity. I mean, here you can see, you can't read obviously the detail of this map here, but in the dark green countries, so you know, we can see Nigeria, Chad, DRC, less than 10% of the population has access to energy. I mean, that's incredible, yeah? So it basically means in the big cities they have access to energy and forget the rest of the country. So everything I've talked about is decentralized, is local, and that is what is now happening in Africa. So what you will have is you will have local microgrids, whether it's wind or solar, depending, obviously, for Africa, solar is very important, that will then distribute local energy into households, villages, groups of small towns. So it's this local decentralized energy, renewable energy generation that will be the future. And as I said, we brought this group together at UPF to work with UPF partners and chapters in Africa to see, you know, are there areas, regions, where maybe we could help bring together the right partners to stimulate and then implement some of these projects. You know, you need financing for these projects, you need local entrepreneurs willing to support, you need equipment providers, you need somebody to operate and maintain the system after it has been installed. So the important thing is also making sure that all of these resources and skills, or the majority of them, are supplied locally. Yeah? Because the biggest mistake that can be made is that they be supplied, you know, by Western banks or companies, and you know, with very little participation from the local players. Because local players also have to help in the design and definition of these systems. These systems have to cater to local economies. So it's not going to be my view of what an African village needs that is what they need. You have to involve the local community to actually understand what is this system for, who is it going to serve, what are the needs, yeah? So that was just a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the developments since the Paris conference. And I can only say, watch out for this balancing of the system that I mentioned, because, you know, that really means generating more energy without having to spend much more actually to do so. Yeah. So hope that was interesting. And
Very,
yeah.
very.
Okay.